Hello, everyone. This week we are speaking with Ruth Pearce. She is the author of Be a Project Motivator. She's also a coach, a mentor to professionals who are focused on project management. So, Ruth, thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to have this conversation with us today.
Oh, thanks ever so much for inviting me, Brian. I'm very pleased to be here.
Yep, absolutely. So, Ruth, tell us a little bit about your background.
How far back do you want me to go? That could be a very long story, and I love stories. So, as most people will probably be able to guess, I am not originally American. I'm from the UK. I actually accidentally became a project manager. I came over with a software implementation project, or it's actually a pilot site in 1992 over to New York. And my project manager was deported. And so the organization said, well, you seem pretty organized. You seem to know the customer. You seem to know what tasks are on deck. So why don't you project manage it, and we'll send someone else to do the technical role that you've been doing. So I said, okay. So that was me, 1992. I become a project manager. I realized that I really like that. I really like the liaising with the client, dealing with the stakeholders and all of that kind of stuff. So that was how I made that transition. I went home to the UK, and then in 1995, I immigrated to the US and have been here ever since. So June 1st is actually my 24th anniversary of arriving in the US.
Awesome.
And I have been a project manager, a program manager of some sort or other in some organization or other ever since. I did my PMP certification in 2007. So for a long time, I was doing it uncertified, sort of informally. And then I decided that it made sense to get the certification. And so here I am many years later. And then as time went on, I moved my attention really from processes, project management processes, to people. I realized that I was spending a lot of time chasing people and hounding them for things. And we use those phrases of cat herding and all of that. And I realized that part of that was because I wasn't connecting with them. So the sort of the next 10, 12 years of my career, I really focused on how to build connection with people, how to get to what motivates them, how to understand them better, and who they are when they come to work. And so that's really been my focus ever since. And that is what I bring to projects, is that people focus. I can still do the process. I understand the process. I know the techniques. But I find that focusing on the people side is where we really get a great bang for the buck.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with you. So Ruth, in today's workplace, it's fast paced. Organizations, mid-sized and large organizations, are oftentimes trying to implement 50 to 250 projects a year. From your perspective, what's the new role of the project manager? How should a project manager now think about their work given today's pace of change?
So it's an interesting question. I've just come back from PMI EMEA in Dublin, and there were 2 or 3 sessions there that had some sort of title that related to future-proofing your career. What do you need to be doing now in order to keep yourself relevant as we move forward? And I think one of the significant things is that I believe we're going to see a fast development of automated processes, everyone's talking about AI, of course, but we're going to see that those process type things are going to become more automated. Even health checks of where we are on a project are now being triggered by someone sending the weekly email saying, how do you feel about the project this week? And you get to choose, I strongly agree, disagree. So all of that data collection side that project managers used to administer, I think is going to become less of a differentiator for a project manager. And what we're seeing is that it is the people side. People like to call it soft skills, but they're really hard to develop. It's the people side that is really what is making the difference, and keeping people engaged, helping them prioritize, understanding decision-making processes, recognizing the biases people bring specifically and particularly to decision-making processes. That's where the project manager needs to focus their attention. Our decision-making, not ours as project managers, but as organizations, has to speed up, needs to be more effective, and it's difficult. So the more that project managers can understand about that, I think the more they will contribute to organizational success and the need to handle all of these projects at the same time.
Yeah. So you speak at multiple PMI events and other events that are focused on project management. Would you say that the mainstream personality in the project management arena is it very? Would you agree that it's somewhat analytical? Um,
I am so glad it's almost, I'll give you the $10 after the session is over, because I think you are aware that I've actually been doing some research
yeah,
on project managers, and I have a sample now of 460-ish confirmed project managers who've been taking an assessment called the VIA Character Strengths Assessment to
yeah,
look at what strengths they naturally bring to the table, what are they blessed with in terms of strengths that they bring as project managers. And what I'm finding is exactly that they tend to be more analytical, they tend to be more on the planning side, data driven, and less savvy about people. So we measure social intelligence as one of the people strengths in the assessment. And on average, it's not true of every project manager, but on average, project managers tend to rank social intelligence lower than people in the rest of the community. So that includes the people that project managers are working with.
yeah,
So that tends to suggest that we're more on the analytical side. And there's lots of research that is showing that if you spend a lot of time analyzing information and data and making decisions and tracking spreadsheets and doing all of that kind of an analysis type stuff,
yeah,
it's just like a muscle. You're not exercising the people connection muscle.
yeah,
And so that's one of the reasons why I focused on it so much in the second part of my career. I shouldn't talk as though it's over, because I realized that I'd gone down that very analytical path, as we all tend to do. And so, yes, I do think that we have a tendency to be analytical. I even spoke to someone at that conference I just mentioned, and we talked about social intelligence, and this particular project manager said, I actually think it's good news that we don't have high social intelligence. And I said, oh, tell me more. That's interesting. Classic coaching question. Tell me more.
yeah,
And this particular person said, well, if we get all tangled up in what's going on with the person, we'll lose sight of tasks and deliverables, and we need to stay on top of those. That's what our job is.
wow,
So I think historically that has been what our job was, and we need to transition, because there's going to be robots that can do that. That's not where we're going to add value.
yeah, yeah. No, I love that. I love the way you articulated the gap, right? With we need more social intelligence, but yet the mainstream thought in the project management community is that we really need to be more analytical and task focused. There's a gap there. So I think this is the perfect pivot into strength-based project management. So can you tell us what is strength-based project management and what's its connection to positive psychology?
Let me answer that one first. So strengths-based project management is using this concept of character strengths. There are 24 character strengths that were researched by Martin Seligman and Christopher Peterson in the early 2000s, and they were financed by the Meyerson Foundation, which is based in Cincinnati. And it came from Martin Seligman saying that as the president of the APA, the American Psychological Association, he stood up and said, we've had all this focus on fixing problems, the deficit mindset, but when we fix an illness, we don't make people well, we just make them not ill. So you kind of get to zero, but you don't get to the positive side. And he called upon psychologists and other fields to start looking at what makes people flourish, what helps them to actually be the best they can be and not the least bad they can be, if you can, if we can make that distinction.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically the research showed that there are 24 character strengths that are recognized everywhere by every culture, by every religion, by, all around the world. There are certain things that people make the argument are strengths, if I can use the air quotes. For example, achievement or ambition is something that Americans love to push as a strength, but because they're not universal, they've not been included. They make sense in certain cultures and not in others. It's not, achievement and ambition isn't something that is revered in Chinese culture, for example. And so only those 24 strengths that make sense to everybody were included in the classification at the end of the day. And that classification of strengths is seen by a lot of people as being the backbone of positive psychology. So Martin Seligman's call was, let's focus on what makes people flourish. And the sort of foundational piece is this character strengths stuff. The premise is that we all start with all 24 to some degree. We can lose them, we can suppress them a little bit along the way, but typically we all have the capacity for all 24. We have some strengths that are really the core of us. We call them signature strengths. They're the top 5, roughly, strengths in your profile. And then we have ones at the bottom that everyone always gravitates to. You know, when I go do workshops, so I've got a profile here, you know, and people have their profile. And when I do workshops, I look across and I see everybody is looking at the bottom 5, you know, and what are you doing? Well, I'm looking at my bottom 5 because that's obviously what I need to fix. And that's thank you. I happen to know you took your survey, Brian, so thank you for admitting that. We all do it. We all, especially in our culture, we all look at that and say, wow, this one is right at the bottom, you know, or this one's number 23. I need to work on that and fix it. And what the research shows is that can be helpful. There's nothing wrong with that. And there's a huge benefit from taking your top strengths and honing your use of them, understanding them, appreciating them, really developing and applying them in a mindful way, and then taking that beyond you to people outside of you. So when I'm looking at this, it's the project manager. We start with the project manager. What are their strengths? What's their profile? We look at what their strengths can do to help them as a project manager, as a leader, as a member of a team, as a member of a management team, all of those different components. And then we help them start to see the strengths that are in other people. And we get them to strength spot and then leverage those strengths they see in other people to actually bond the team together and help the team work as almost like one individual with all these different attributes.
Yeah, I love
and
that.
one of the great things about character strengths is that we all have all 24, so we have all of them in common, and yet the way we express them is unique to us because it depends on our experiences, our upbringing. You know, where did we grow up? Who did we grow up with? What was our school situation like? Where were we in the sort of economic pecking order? All of those things contribute. So the way we express those strengths is different, but they're all recognizable. We all know kindness when we see it, for example.
Yes.
One person's kindness might be picking up someone for something because that's all they have to offer, and someone else's kindness might be, you know, paying their way through school. They're both kindness. And so it's what I found with project managers is it's a really straightforward way of connecting them to this social intelligence side. Social intelligence is a character strength, but breaking it down in terms of these character strengths becomes very observable, and project managers like it. They get, because it's analytical, so they still stay analytical, strangely, but they're analyzing for those soft things. Like, is this person very driven by a sense of fairness? Are they tremendously kind? You know, is honesty the most important thing to them? And so you can be analytical and yet develop this sort of soft feel about people and engage them with their strengths. So that I hope that answers the question. So, you know,
it does. It does. And Ruth, thank you for providing more context around the assessment. You know, I would say that your assessment would be applicable for almost anybody that's working on large scale projects or any project team, beyond the role of a project manager. So
absolutely. And
because, you know, like my background is in change management, and I work very closely with project managers as well as executives. And I'm taking the assessment. I'm like, man, this is beautiful. This is applicable almost for any team, you know?
Right.
But
well, and that's what I've encouraged people to do is, and that's actually the model in the book, is that there are different levels. So I think a lot of people are familiar with the ripple effect. So one of the things that is amazing is that you will notice, and I know you took your survey, and I'll ask you a couple of questions about that in a minute, but you've taken your survey, and you mentioned to me before we started that even the questions themselves caused you to pause and think as you were evaluating, how am I going to answer that? What you will start to notice is that your own increased awareness of your strengths will ripple out to other people, because you will start to choose different ways of using your strengths, especially if you spend any time thinking about them and planning it and all of that. You will start to use your strengths differently with people and be more mindful of a few things. One is, how can you use them in a positive way? You know, maybe there are times where your top strength of creativity isn't the most useful thing in the room, because A, it's not the role that you need to be playing, and B, there's 5 other people with creativity, and all that's going to happen is that you guys are going to have a jolly good time. You know, it will be lots of fun, but at the end of the day, no decisions will be made and no progress is made, right? So you start to be more mindful of that. And people see you doing that, and they see the effect it has on you, and they start going, well, I want some of that. How do I do what he's doing? Because he seems more sort of like he fits in his own skin and he feels more comfortable with himself and all of that. So there's that ripple effect. So project managers, if all they can do is do this themselves, then that's good enough. If they have the capacity to spread it to other people by having other people take the survey, that's fantastic. I've worked on a couple of projects where I was fortunate enough to be located in the basement with my team. Yeah. And so no one knew what we were doing. The basic assessment is free. And so I just said to my team, hey, what does anyone think about doing this assessment? We'll do it together and we'll do some debriefs, because I knew how to do that. Yeah. And they said, sure, okay, we'll do that. And so we did the assessment as a team, and 85% of people said, yes, I'll do that. So then we were able to do some stuff as a team. And then if you're fortunate enough, again, to be in an organization where leadership is receptive, you can go and say, well, I've done this assessment. There's some amazing things we can do with it. I've rippled this out to a few other people and they've tried it too. And I think that it would be great to do it organization-wide or team by team or whatever it is. And, so that's the third level. It might be the third level of bravery, maybe, to actually step up and say, I think this assessment could help us. And what we do with the assessment afterwards, because an assessment is just an assessment, right? Yeah. It's the steps we take.
Yeah, well, for me, it was powerful. I love the results. The results were pretty straightforward. So you didn't need a degree to analyze the results. It was very, very intuitive. I greatly appreciate you for giving me the opportunity to take the assessment. Ruth, so let's pivot a little bit. I did take the assessment this morning. You have my results. What questions do you have for me?
So my first question would be, how do you feel about the top strengths that came out in the list?
I agree. I agree. I think the first one was creativity. And I do feel like that's one of my top strengths.
Okay. And you had fairness and leadership and love and teamwork were in your list as well?
Yeah. I do feel like that's correct. And it's almost a reflection of my background. Spent a lot of time in education, spending 13 years in the military. I'm married, I have 2 kids. So I practice a lot of these different strengths on a daily basis. So I would totally agree.
Okay. And what did you've revealed that you went to the bottom and said, which ones are my lowest? What did you think about the ones that were at the bottom of the strengths pile?
Ruth, I don't have, it's on my computer. I don't have.
Oh, okay. So I'll give you your bottom 4. So forgiveness, appreciation of beauty and excellence, prudence, and humility.
Yeah, those, honestly, they shocked me. They shocked me. And I did spend a few minutes thinking about, okay, I think these are great qualities to have. But why were they ranked as my bottom 5? And so that was the question. And to be honest with you, I'm probably going to spend a little bit more time thinking about why those are my bottom 5. I don't necessarily see it as a bad thing. I just think that I have to, for me, I'm going to spend more time thinking about, okay, how do I apply these strengths more often? And I just have to give it a little bit more thought. And honestly, my role is changing. So I'm actually spending less time on individual projects in organizations, and I'm spending more time as a consultant, and then growing ChangeNerd. So my capacity is shifting. And so something else I'm thinking about is, as my role continues to shift, how can I apply these strengths differently, if that makes sense to you?
Absolutely. So a couple of things as you're thinking about it. One is just to re-emphasize that the bottom ones are not weaknesses. This assessment doesn't measure weaknesses. It only measures the relative strength of your strengths. So it's as I mentioned earlier, we all have the capacity for all 24, and all that those lower ones, we call them the lesser strengths, all that those lesser strengths are really telling you is those are the ones that are the hardest to reach for, possibly. They might be the least energizing. So the top 5, your signature strengths, usually meet the 3 E's criteria. So they're essential, they're energizing, and they're effortless. So when you use them, they feel, often people don't even realize they are strengths because they feel so natural and ordinary and everyday that they don't recognize them as something special, you know. So they meet the 3 E's. The lesser strengths are the ones where after you've used them, you know, so let's say prudence, for example, you've really sat down and planned something out and thought about all of the sides and used some judgment to help balance out the prudence and come up with a plan and put all the steps into a project plan or something like that. At the end of the day, you may feel kind of, you know, I'm glad I did it. It was worthwhile. It was appropriate for me to do this at this point. But, you know, now I need to put my feet up and just relax. Whereas if you were sitting there being really creative all day, you probably feel sort of energized and you have a buzz. And so that's really what that's telling you, is that those ones are there for you. But when you use them, you're probably not going to feel, you know, sort of upbeat and like you're on fire. Whereas some of your top ones can really make you feel like you're in flow and be excited.
Yeah, and the reason why I love it is because you can think about it based on the situation that you're in. People who know me, people who I work with, they know that, you know, I get highly energized when we're brainstorming. You know, you give me a whiteboard and a team, and we're going to laugh. We're going to have a great time. But at the same time, you have to be mindful of time. You know, there's work to be done. There's, you know, you have deadlines and things. And so we can't spend every day brainstorming, right? So
Right.
I love your assessment because, you know, for me, I do have to pay attention to things that energize me versus things that have to get done in order to meet a deadline. Because I will spend more time doing things that make me feel good. I guess anyway.
Surprise.
Yeah.
Not like the rest of us who choose the things that make us miserable. So
yeah, right. So, no, I really, really appreciate your assessment. So, what are some of the common barriers? So you explained what strength-based project management is. What are some of the barriers to doing this? Because Ruth, it does require a new way of thinking, a new mindset, especially towards the work. So what are some of the common barriers that you're aware of?
So I think the biggest barrier is to trying, you know, but a lot of us have that. One of the things I talk about quite often is mindsets, you know, so we have that fixed mindset and our growth mindset, and we have this sense of, and we all have a bit of both. There are some things where we feel as though, you know, this is what we know and this is all we're ever going to know and this is all I'll ever be, and that's a fixed mindset. And then there are other things where it's sort of, we're more experimental. We know that we can learn it. We have confidence that we can get there. That's the growth mindset.
Yeah.
And I think often people think this strength spotting thing is going to be super, super hard, especially if, as we've discussed, you're someone who's data analytical, but not used to spotting people's softer side, if I can put it that way. And people will say to me, well, how do I do this then? You know, how do I actually go away and apply this? And the answer is you just do it, which isn't terribly helpful. You know, sort of people look at me and go, well, you know, that didn't really move me any further forward. So there's a few things you can do. One that I like to do is have the list of strengths. And I think you made the comment earlier that they're sort of very accessible. They're described in words that make sense. They're not jargony. That can be one of the challenges with some other assessments, is that they have their own language and you have to decode it. This doesn't require decoding. So take the list with you. And my recommendation is pick the meeting you're in that is the most boring. Usually one that hopefully you are not leading, because if you were leading it, it wouldn't be boring. But you're sitting there, you're there as a participant. Maybe it's that meeting where you're wondering why you were even invited, you know, maybe you shouldn't have been on the list. Have the list under the table. And instead of trying to read your messages and emails on your phone, look at the list and circle the strengths that you see in the various people who are talking.
Yeah.
Just highlight them and just say, I think that person showed tremendous kindness when they said they would help whomever, John, with getting his work done because he'd had a really stressful week this week because of something going on with his family or whatever. That's kindness, you know, and just write that down. And then pick one person after the meeting. You don't have to do it with everybody, but pick one person, go up to them and tell them what you appreciated. You appreciated this strength in this moment because you saw this behavior.
That's awesome.
And just see what happens. And I can guarantee that in years of doing this, no one has ever turned around and said to me, you did not see that strength in me. I do not have it. They never say, I don't want that strength. What do you mean you saw kindness in me? I don't want anyone thinking I'm kind. No one has ever said that about any of the strengths, humility or leadership, or they may say, oh, I've never really considered that I have that strength, or really nobody's ever said that to me before, but in a pleased, happy way. They're not arguing with you. And then you start to build your confidence. So that would be one thing to overcome that barrier. The other is observe strengths in places where it just doesn't matter. So what strengths do you see in television shows that you like? What strengths do you see in movies that you enjoy watching? My favorite movie is V for Vendetta. I love that movie. If anyone doesn't know it, it's a British movie based on a comic book, actually, but I love it. Yeah. But you see all sorts of things, perseverance, the guy's kindness, love, real humanity in this person, fighting for everybody else's benefit, really. Sort of the wisdom strengths, he's brave and he's creative and he's curious and all of these things. You see all of these strengths. Well, it doesn't matter if I get them right because I'm not going to tell him that I saw them, but you can practice spotting them with those favorite characters. It gives you a reason why watching TV is actually now an exercise I've sent you to do. So it isn't just a lazy thing to do at the end of the day. And I mean, another great show for it is Game of Thrones. There's an article out there about someone who's done strength spotting on Game of Thrones. Yeah. And the strengths that show up, type strengths, love and support and social intelligence and teamwork and leadership and things like that. All these strengths that you wouldn't necessarily expect when you hear the description of Game of Thrones storyline. So that is, to me, that is the one single biggest obstacle is people's lack of confidence about doing this strength spotting. They may feel like they're going to seem too sort of soft and squishy. Some cultures have that challenge. Some of the European cultures are sort of like, well, yeah, we don't do that. We don't say those kind of things. But once you try it and you see what happens, it's amazing the change it makes to people on teams.
Oh, that's awesome. You mentioned Game of Thrones. I was thinking, my wife is really, really into Game of Thrones. But I would almost imagine if I was to go and watch The Walking Dead, I'm pretty sure that I would see some of the same strengths from.
Absolutely. Yeah. And actually, Dr. Ryan Nemick, who's the education director for the VIA Institute on Character that developed the assessment, Walking Dead is his favorite TV show.
Yep. I get that's very
and he's the strengths guru. So if he likes it, then, it must be the right show to watch.
Right. So let's see. Ken has a question. Ken, can you hear us?
Yes.
Awesome. So Ruth, Ken is he's online. He has a question. Ken, go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, fire away, Ken.
Not to pick on Brian, but he mentioned that in his bottom 5, there were a couple that, such as forgiveness and humility. It would seem in a team environment that those should be worked on. And yet you said that the emphasis kind of the philosophy that you're following is to focus on the strengths. Could you just elaborate a little bit more on that?
Absolutely. And I think we should pick on Brian. That's a really good thing to do. So, well, a couple of comments before I move on. So the research is changing a little bit and there's going to be a new version of the survey that comes out. But up until recently, the 5 most common lowest strengths, so the 5 strengths that are most likely to show up in the bottom 5 were spiritual. I have to look because it's a while since I've looked at them, but spirituality, prudence, humility, self-regulation, and zest. And I actually really like it when self-regulation shows up really low, because what I'll ask groups is, how do you feel about self-regulation showing up low? And people, oh yeah, I don't have any self-regulation. And then I'll ask the question, how many people woke up this morning and thought, oh, I just want to stay in bed. I don't want to get up and get going on the day. And there's always at least 50% of the room puts their hand up. And then I say, well, what did you do? And they say, well, I got up anyway and I went to work. I got the kids ready for school, whatever it is, and went about my business. That is self-regulation. And yet it's at the bottom of those people's profiles. So I do want to emphasize that it's not there. It is just that it's not energizing It's not the most comfortable strength for the person to use. And then in terms of what we want in teams, one of the things I do when we bring teams together is we create a profile as though the team was one person. So we take the top 5 strengths of all of the team members and blend them together, and then essentially create a ranking for the team as this one person. And sometimes what you see is that you have a smattering of all the strengths, depends on the size of the team, but also the type of team. And then other times what you see is that there are gaps, and that nobody has certain strengths close to the top, in the top 5 or 6. And what we can explore there is, what does that do to the culture of the team? So it may be that if Brian is working in a team with 15 or 20 people, and humility is a high strength for the rest of that team, it may be good that it's low for him, because he may be the person who speaks up on behalf of the team and says, look what we did, whereas the individuals within the team are not inclined to do so, and stuff gets missed, that they've accomplished, and that they're not getting recognition. So it's all, to me, about balance. The other thing I do a lot of work with individuals on is taking their profile and looking at, how does the sum of their strengths come together to make up a different strength? So, for example, leadership. There's a lot of people, when I do this survey, they're in a leadership position. They've been identified as a leader. Their team members say that they have leadership skills and that they're good at it. And then leadership shows up as number 15 in their strengths list. And they say, well, clearly I should not be a leader then, because leadership is so low. And then you look at their qualities, their strengths, to see how they achieve the goals of leadership with the strengths they have. So appreciation of beauty and excellence is a great strength for recognizing the skills and strengths and abilities of others. So that's, check that mark for a leader. They need to be pulling out the best from other people. Curiosity means that this person is able to ask a lot of questions instead of jumping in and telling everybody what to do. Yeah. Check that. That's a great leadership strength, to pull everybody's opinions in and get input, and not just drive things along blind to what's going on around them, and so on. We look fairness, for example. Fairness is treating people equally and with respect. Obviously, we want that in a leadership role. Treating them fairly isn't the same. It doesn't mean treating every person exactly the same way. They may have different skills, different interests, different experience, and so on. But treating them with a general sense of respect and communicating clearly to them and being fair in your dealings with them is a great leadership skill to have. And yet this person's got leadership as number 15. So how we blend our strengths, that's kind of strengths 201 instead of 101. How we bring the strengths together and use them in combination is the next thing about, how we can leverage our strengths really well, rather than worrying so much that number 23 is something that I should elevate. We can use deliberate practice to change the order of our strengths. Life experiences will change the order of our strengths. Brian, you mentioned that you have a family. Very often people find that when they have children, kindness and love move up in their strengths, and they stay moved up for the rest of their life. It's a one-way trip that those go up. Yeah. Because typically our strengths are fairly stable. They don't move around a lot. They do move around a little bit, but not a lot. But life events, a trauma, for example, may change things for people. Life events and deliberate practice are the 2 ways that we can actually change the sequence of our strengths ranking.
Awesome. So Ken, did she answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. Awesome.
You don't sound sure, Ken. There was yes with a reservation.
Well, I was just trying to get my mute button unclicked.
Oh, okay. I just want to be sure, because I don't like to leave people afterwards going, you know what, I don't think she really addressed that.
Yeah. Ken, thank you for your question. And while I have you on the line, Ken, thank you for all your support in the ChangeNerd community. I really, really appreciate it. Ken, from the early days, Ken was one to, share things and also comment on questions. I really appreciate that. So Ruth.
And then Brian, I just want to pause there and say, you have just demonstrated how the fact that a strength is low down, it doesn't mean you can't use it, because you expressed your appreciation. That's an appreciation of Ken's effort and his contribution and his willingness to participate. And yet appreciation of beauty is and excellence is number 22 for you. So you're using your appreciation and your gratitude. Let's see, where's gratitude? number 13. So neither of those top strengths. And how did you feel doing that? How did you feel acknowledging Ken's contribution?
Natural. It felt natural. So, but Ruth, it also helps to have a coach like you in real time. I wish you were around.
Highlighting, look what you did. Yeah, that's the cheerleader in me.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that. Ruth, can you share the benefit for the community? We talked before the webcast, and you were mentioning how this survey is going to be available for those in the ChangeNerd community. Can you talk a little bit?
Yes, absolutely. So I am privileged to be able to, it's a free survey. You can go to VIA Institute on Character and just look up the survey. But one of the opportunities that I have as a coach and someone affiliated with the VIA Institute on Character, and I do want to say I became affiliated with them after I wrote the book. So they saw the book, saw I was a project manager, and said, we need a project manager. Will you come and project manage for us, and not the other way around? I feel sort of honor bound to say that, because otherwise people feel like I'm just a mouthpiece for them. Yeah. I had seen this stuff working before, but I can create a link which allows us to collect surveys on behalf of the community. So we can do it as the ChangeNerd community. Brian has forged a path and is the first person to take the survey. And what we're going to do is leave that link available for 2 or 3 weeks, and people in the community can take the survey, get their strengths back. So you will get your ranked assessment of strengths. And then what I'm going to do is do what I described. I'm going to take the ChangeNerd community and compile that single profile as though we were all one person, and I'm going to include my results in there. And then we're going to pose some questions about what culture is implied by that community profile. And it will be interesting to see, do we all have similar strengths? Are we across the board? What does that mean? And we can look at it in terms of, if this was a team, if this profile represented a team, exploration of that in the community as a follow-up to this session.
Awesome. No, thank you so much, Ruth, for that benefit. It's going to be good to get a collective visual of the personalities and strengths of the ChangeNerd community. So thank you so much.
You're very welcome. And I just want to emphasize, it will be totally anonymous. So it's going to be an aggregated result, no names or anything on it. It's all I'm doing is taking those top 5 strengths for each person and aggregating them. And then we'll see, are we a community where everybody is low in humility? That will be an interesting conversation. Yeah. And we'll see what that profile looks like, and how does our community feel as a community? What does it look like in terms of character strengths?
Awesome. So Ruth, before we conclude this conversation, can you share with everyone where they can find your book, Be a Project Motivator?
Sure, I'm happy to. So it is available in print, audio, and Kindle on Amazon. It's on Amazon.com, Amazon.co.uk, Amazon.ca, and it's also available through Barnes & Noble in print and Nook editions. You can, if you have any interest in getting multiple copies, I can arrange for that to be done through my publisher, and then there's a discount if people wanted to do that for any reason. So we can do it directly through Barrett Kohler, the publisher, as well.
Awesome. Well, Ruth, thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule for us to have this conversation today. Greatly appreciate it. And for those of you on the line, thank you for taking time out of your schedule as well. This concludes our webcast.